Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Index at Office Hours. Today is the 7th of March, and this is IOH 97. For anyone who is new to Index at Office Hours, this is the town square for graph ecosystem participants to come together and discuss the most important topics that are relevant for indexes. This is a conversation, and by that token, we love participation. And so at certain parts of today's conversation, please do participate via voice or text. If you're having any troubles unmuting your mic and contributing via voice, just please let us know in the chat box, just as Steph did today, and we'll try and get you sorted out there. As a reminder, this is a session that will be recorded and distributed onto public channels like YouTube. So if you're concerned about privacy, please bear that in mind. And with that, let's get into today's exciting agenda, which before discussing, I will link so that you guys can follow along with me. So here we go. That's the link. As always, I'm going to start off with a shout out for 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗂, and this week's episode was 106, all about the intersection between AI, artificial intelligence, and crypto. 3 members of the semiotic team were interviewed by Nick. We had Annie, Sam, and Tomasz. And this was a special edition where they spoke about the AI expertise within the semiotic team and the ways that they're contributing as a core developer, bringing that expertise. As many of you know, it feels like, AI seems to be having a resurgence. It's all the rage, specifically with the latest developments with OpenAI and ChatGPT. And so this conversation was very much around that topic. It was a great breakdown of all of the things that are going on in the space and how that links to crypto. The conversation also touched on how semiotic is implementing some interesting solutions using machine learning and AI in the graph ecosystem. And so if you're interested in any of those particular topics, I would recommend checking out that particular podcast episode. And again, just as I did with the agenda, I will link to that right here. Sweet. That is everything as far as opening remarks. And with that, I will hand over to Anna, who's going to take us into our regular schedule of Protocol Watch.
Thank you, Abel, and hello, everyone. Okay, so this week on Repo Watch, it's quite a light one. So I'm going to start with execution layer clients. And here we have had a new 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀 version. This is release version 2.40.0. So this is this is an important change because it fixes the issues that were being seen with Polygon, and I'm sure, and there will be more updates about this later. But just overall, some of the things that have changed here. So there has been a breaking change. So Docker image now has a default entry point, which is a 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀 binary. The consensus layer client has been fixed with the client regression, which causes it losing all the peers over time. And there has been a fixed historical code access and translation tracing for Gnosis chain and Polygon for the case of contracts with written bytecode. And there's a lot other fixes, and so Matthew is letting us know there is an even later release, so 2.40.1. I haven't had a look at that, but just really quickly, so that's just a patch release. Actually, that is the release that fixes the Polygon bug, causing nodes to get stuck until restarted. And it also changes the default behavior not to drop peers for empty responses, and instead introduced a flag sentry that drop useless peers. And it fixed the regression introduced in 2.40.0, causing panic in debug trace transactions. So that is the latest release. Can you tell us, Matthew, if you've already tried this release? And I will, by the end of IOH, update the agenda to contain this release as well.
Yeah, so Anna, I've tried it. I'm trying it on Polygon just to see, and it seems better, but not perfect. It doesn't seem to solve all my issues. Anyway.
Thank you. And are the issues you are seeing only individual to you, or are issues that everyone was seeing?
Oh, it's still getting stuck downloading headers and whatever. So it's still the generic issues.
Thank you. All right, so maybe we will have to wait a bit more time before before upgrading to these versions.
What I noticed is in the Polygon channel in the 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗀 Discord that there was a request to send traces with specific logging enabled on the 𝗨𝗀𝗀 node to the Polygon team so that they can see where there's still problems. So I think if anybody has problems, then that probably would be a good next step.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us, Matthew. All right, and on the execution layer client, we've also had another release for 𝗨𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗀. This is a release version 1.3.4, and this fixes the upgrade merged blocks from version 2 to version 3. So what that means is that you should run the upgrade merge blocks option again if you previously used v2 blocks that were upgraded to v3. It also has added a backoff mechanism for bursts, which allows an initial burst of a certain number of connection, allowing a new connection every specific number of seconds or whenever an existing connection closes. And there are a few flags for this behavior. Another thing, substreams were bumped to the current March 1st develop head. This is all of the releases we've had this week. So before handing over to Abel, does anyone have any comments about this new 𝗨𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗀 Ethereum release?
So just on the Firehose release, so like a couple of weeks ago, I made the Polygon blocks available for download in case anybody wanted to try that. They were upgraded from v2 blocks to v3 blocks, so they would need to be reprocessed. So if anybody downloaded them, they need to run this reprocess step. I will make a new version of the Polygon blocks available probably later this week or early next week. And when that happens, then you won't have to do the reprocess step. But anyway, if anybody downloaded the blocks, they need to be reprocessed.
Thank you, Matthew. Over to you, Abel. Juan,
Wonderful. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to hand it back to Juan as well.
No worries, I'm here. Cool. For Protocol Watch, we have only a few updates. Getting into forum governance, we have GAP file data sources. There's support for IPFS that has been included in GraphNode, but it's to be released in the next version 0.30.0. Then we have GAP46, which is the migration helpers for L2. Pablo updated the PR as well as the forum thread to clarify the requirements for the vesting contracts. I think the requirements are that you need to fund with ETH the migration helper to be able to move it to L2 or something along those lines. There's more clarity in the PR as well as in the forum thread. Getting into forum research, there's no new updates since last IOH. Getting into the contracts repository, we have a few updates to the migration helpers PRs, both for subgraphs, stake, delegation, and curators. And then we have merges to some of the Open Zeppelin audits that were still open last week. Getting into the core network subgraphs, for the network subgraph itself, we have a new minor release which fixes an off-by-one error on the epoch entity for new environments. This is to reflect a change in the contracts that is not reflected in mainnet. So mainnet didn't have this change because the epoch manager was not upgraded, of course. But all new environments do have this off-by-one error. Now it's fixed in version 0.18.2, which is the latest released, and it has been, of course, deployed to the hosted service in IPFS enabled and non-IPFS enabled or IPFS disabled versions. So if you want to sync it yourself, it should be available in one of the endpoints. And that's pretty much it for Protocol Watch. So I'm going to hand it over to Abel now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Juan. And yeah, I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is another reminder about the 𝗨𝗀𝗂𝗪 ceremony. I've already spoken about this in the past, so I will, instead of bore many of you with the same, for anyone who's new to the conversation, I'm just going to copy and paste some notes that I put together, which will hopefully help you get a good understanding of what the topic is about. Let's see. Just going to add the rest of my notes. Bear with me 1 second. There we go. That should be useful. And then I will also link to the actual page as well. Yes, perfect. Thank you for linking there, Derek. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Please do investigate. Obviously, there's a lot of value there for those who will have never participated in a ceremony before, as we will be leveraging something like this in the Graph ecosystem soon. Cool. Now I am very excited to say that we have Ford on the call, who's going to tell us a bit about the latest news that's come out from Edgenode as to them starting up their own indexer. So Ford, if you're here, please take it away.
Hey, Abel. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can indeed.
Cool. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I thought I'd just pop in today and make myself available to answer any questions from y'all. But just to give a summary, if you guys haven't seen the news, at Edgenode, we have changed our indexing strategy a bit. So in the past, we've been running what might be called altruistic indexers that were syncing most subgraphs on the network, only allocating 1 GRT to each, basically not collecting indexing rewards, and only serving queries if there weren't other indexers available with a good quality of service. And we've adjusted that to launch what we're calling a profitable indexer initiative. So we still have our altruistic indexers, but we are now also running a profitable indexer that is focused on collecting indexing rewards. So I'm using things like the allocation optimizer and other tools to aim that strategy more towards indexing reward profits and query fees. And yeah, we just announced that last week. We just launched the indexer. I can put a link in the chat here, but I just wanted to come in and kind of make that clear to everyone, provide that announcement directly to you all, and give it a chance to answer any questions or have any discussion around that if you guys have any. So yeah, I'll open up the floor to anyone who has any questions around that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ford. And yeah, I've also linked to the post in the chat. And yeah, this is the perfect opportunity to ask Ford any questions. So fire away if anyone has any.
Pretty quiet. Doesn't seem like there's any pressing questions.
Yeah.
Someone's writing in the chat though. A few questions from the Data Nexus team. What tools am I using besides the optimizer? We're using a Kubernetes stack as we have for other things. We're using Grafana for monitoring, Prometheus for metrics. It's a pretty standard stack. Using the allocation optimizer, and starting to use Firehose as well to test that out and reduce our reliance on RPC endpoints. And as part of this effort, I should mention that I am intending that everything we do at our Edgenode indexer is something we learn from and share with everyone in the indexer community. So as much as we have time and as quickly as possible, I'm going to try to make sure that all the tools that we use, if there's anything that's different than the standard tools, we'll open source those or share them. But right now, it's pretty much the standard tools. We're using Customize and JSONnet and Kubernetes for our infrastructure. So we're not using Launchpad at the moment. I got a question from Big Jim about that. There are probably some Grafana dashboards that are different that we are using that from what you guys are using, and one of the early projects I have on the priority list is to open source all the dashboards that we're using to make sure that we're sharing those and we can all kind of collaborate on dashboards together. Another project we have in the pipeline is to update the allocation optimizer to also allow you to optimize for query fees, and just make that a bit of a more robust tool, and continue to iterate on that, as well as, of course, continue to contribute to the indexer agent and the indexer components and drive that forward.
Hey guys, can you hear me? It's Jim.
Yep.
We can.
I'm really surprised nobody's asked this question, or maybe I'm just a massive conspiracist for it. What's your thoughts on the conflict of interest around running the gateways and running an indexer?
Yeah, we're definitely in a situation where we're running both. We're doing our best to make sure all the gateway data is shared, so any query volume per subgraph, per indexer data that we have is also public, so there's no extra information that gives us an edge there. And anything we can continue to do to make that public, we're gonna, that's a priority for us. We're also helping some other teams set up gateways, and working on that in earnest. So I'm definitely acutely aware of that and trying to make sure that that's not a huge advantage for us. Access, Mark Andre is asking in the chat about access to the ISA. Technically, I could look at the ISA code. I personally have not. I think that it's actually more useful to look at the data coming out of the gateway on what choices it's making. The latency, and volume that each indexer is receiving per subgraph. So those are some things that I look at the public data set when making allocation decisions, just to try to find subgraphs that have high query volume. But as far as that, I think that the public information around the ISA of it tries to optimize for blocks behind, query latency, and keeps a history of query health of each indexer and makes its decisions based on that is basically the information I'm operating on as well. And part of this effort is for me to be in the shoes of the indexer more, so just to find your pain points. So if the ISA is a black box that's really causing issues, that'll become more obvious to me as I work on this, and I can continue to try to advocate for the indexer persona and ask the gateway team for projects, anything that can help out for indexers. So part of this effort is to make our indexer profitable, but to learn from that and make sure that we can have economics and tooling to allow all the indexers on the network to be useful and profitable.
You mentioned that other teams are going to be setting up their own gateways. Is that existing graph core teams, or is that also teams that are in the community, indexers, anything like that?
I believe the first few teams are going to be core dev teams, and I believe potentially a team or two that's not officially a core dev but is just part of the community. And then I'm not deeply involved in that project, but I think the progression will be a trusted set of partners to start, from people in the community and the core devs, and then eventually work on expanding that so it's trustless and anyone can run a gateway, but that's more of a long-term goal. And I believe part of that effort will be progressively open sourcing gateway code, so these other teams can run it, and eventually anyone can run a gateway and add on options to the gateways, build different pricing models, different business models that the gateways might operate with. Hope is asking about some pain points I've identified so far. Good question. Like part of my focus in the past couple of years, a lot of it has been on the indexer agent. So I think naturally I identified product improvements there. And one thing I definitely want to work on is I've identified a lot of like data work that is outside of the main tooling. So I find myself like querying the network subgraph a lot. I find myself sometimes pulling up Jupyter notebooks and aggregating data on query volume, indexing rewards, bringing in subgraph names, and just kind of joining a lot of data together to make decisions. So I'm going to work on slowly trying to integrate some of those kind of workflows into the tooling. So expanding the indexer CLI to maybe be able to call out to GraphMan so you can make indexing changes directly from the CLI, expanding it so you can do more querying of the network subgraph in composable ways to be able to get access to all the data you might need as making decisions, so you don't have to pull out a bunch of different tools as you're doing that stuff. So those are a few of the kind of streamlining and product pain points I've identified recently. Plenty of others too. Oh yeah, so I didn't answer someone's questions around the altruistic indexer. So Derek is asking if we'll continue to run those. Yes, we will. And I think I will be working on a more defined, maybe smaller scope for them, so that they will be focused on bootstrapping support for new subgraphs, support for new chains, and new features. So right now we basically have a signal threshold. So any subgraph that has more than 1,000 GRT signal to it, we will serve on those altruistic indexers. In the future, I'm hoping to narrow that scope a bit so that we'll maybe serve a subgraph until it receives enough support from other indexers where our altruistic indexer is no longer needed. So we'll be kind of bootstrapping support for new features and subgraphs and then dropping off once some threshold of support is added from the indexer community. We also have spun up an indexer on 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗃 to help bootstrap the L2 migration. So we have some indexer support there. As we only have a couple indexers that have moved over there, and it'll be a little bit slow to start until we turn indexing rewards on there. We have another question here around that's a little bit more specific around failed queries while reallocating. I'll have to probably take that to chat and we can get some more information around that. I don't off the top of my head recognize that issue, but I'm definitely happy to help out. It might simply be, so the gateways are always pulling, or very often pulling, the network subgraph to get the latest information on who's allocated to what on the network and how much, and also querying statuses directly from the indexers. So there may be a very small period where the gateway is needing to update its view of the world before it can properly send the queries, but that's definitely something worth looking into. So I'll follow up with that afterwards in the chat. Yeah, it sort of makes sense that the gateway has a little bit of old information for a second until it pulls, until the subgraph is updated. But given that the gateway signing keys and the URLs shouldn't be any different, we should be able to find a way to resolve that odd little period where it's having issues. because I do believe the gateway has a small kind of buffer period where once an allocation closes, it can still send some queries through to that while it's kind of updating its state of the world. So there might be some small issue we can fix there. Any other questions around more of the indexer operations at ENN or our strategy there? Okay, well, if you guys think of anything else, I'm happy to answer questions. I try to pop into Discord once or twice a week. I'm definitely not here as much as I used to be, but I'm always happy to answer questions. And if you guys don't have anything else right now, maybe we can move on to whatever else you have planned, Abel.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ford, for explaining there and also answering people's questions. The next topic is a new guest, and that guest is Ivan, who is the head of product at Enzyme Finance. And without spoiling his announcement / demo too much, I'll let him jump into it. So, Ivan, if you're able to unmute your mic, please do and introduce yourself and get straight away to the demo.
Yeah, thanks. So thanks for having me. Sorry for the problems with Discord, but I think we're good to go now. Yeah, so I'm going to give a quick demo of our integration that we recently did with the graph delegation. Before I actually demo what you can do on that side, I'll just tell you something about Enzyme in case you don't know. So Enzyme is an on-chain asset management protocol. Basically, everybody can set up a vault, and with that vault, you can accept money from other people, and you can, as a vault manager, you manage that money. Typically, you're paid for doing that. So you can charge fees, you can charge management fees, as is done in like mutual funds as well, or you can charge also performance fees, as is done in hedge funds, for example. So typically I would think, or you can think about an Enzyme vault as kind of an on-chain hedge fund. And as I said, there's basically two participants. There's money managers, so those who manage vaults, who manage money for other people. And there's depositors. That's people who kind of have some crypto assets and want to have them managed without, they want to have them managed by somebody who does that professionally. Enzyme has been around for a while. We also changed our name at some point. We used to be called Melon or Melonport. Changed our name for legal reasons, 2020. I think we were one of the early users of subgraphs also. I joined the team late 2018, and one of my first tasks was to build a subgraph, which I did together with Sebastian. Sebastian's on the council. Some of you may know him. Yeah, so that's kind of the introduction about Enzyme. Maybe quickly, who are people that build vaults on Enzyme? We have different user groups. One large user group is DAOs that have treasuries, that have kind of crypto treasuries natively that need to be managed. They can manage the treasuries themselves, or they can employ somebody to do it for them. Also, another user group is kind of regulated money managers. So these would be kind of TradFi money managers that want to run crypto funds for their clients. And we have a whole bunch of, I would call them unregulated small managers, people that manage money for friends and family, basically under the radar of the regulations. So the app I'm currently showing you serves both vault managers and depositors. So as a depositor, basically you can discover vaults, you can see who's today's top gainers, what are the largest vaults, stuff like that. There's also, you can kind of go through currently about a bit more than 1,000 vaults on Ethereum. You can check their AUM, you can go into the details and kind of see what portfolios they're holding. As you can imagine, all of that data is kind of coming from subgraph queries, directly or indirectly. Right. So and so what? And as a money manager, managing money for other people, you can do different things. You can basically build a portfolio of different tokens, and based on your alpha know-how, you can sell tokens, buy tokens whenever you know or whenever you think they're going to go up. So that's kind of the very easy thing you can do. The more interesting thing is you can also interact with many DeFi protocols. So for example, here for this vault, I've just randomly picked one. It has it provides liquidity in Uniswap v3 pools. So we provide that ability for the vault to go into Uniswap v3 pools. It also has kiln staking positions. So it has staked 96 ETH into a contract, and that will be locked up for a while. It also has here a convex locking delegating position. There's quite a lot of integrations. One of the new ones, and that's why I'm here, is the graph. So as a vault manager, you can basically interact with the graph. So you can delegate the GRT that the vault holds into indexers. We are linking to different. So the idea is basically that you as a vault manager can delegate different amounts of GRT to different indexers if you want that, or you can delegate to one, of course. But in principle, you can build a portfolio of delegation positions, and you would do that as a money manager, as a vault manager, to create some additional yield. And you would do that, of course, because you know which indexes you want to delegate to. In principle, of course, every investor can buy GRT and they can delegate them to indexers, as you know. But maybe it's too difficult to them to find out where they should delegate to. So each of our vault managers can delegate to indexers. And so what I can do as a vault manager, I've delegated to an indexer a while ago. I can go and explore indexers. That brings our vault managers to the graphs indexes page. And I can then, I'm just copying. No, this maybe not the good one. Let's look at high APRs, or actually, since Ford was just presenting that, let's see if we can deposit here. So I can basically enter the address of the indexer, and then I could say I want to delegate a certain amount that I have for the vault. And yeah, so if I click delegate here, the transaction will happen. So I'm not going to do that. Also, I can see the details of the indexer. I can kind of delegate more, or also I can undelegate. So that's basically the integration that we've built. So as a vault manager, you now have access to the graph delegation positions. So that's basically the demo. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer them.
We have, I guess, a question from Ford. Not really a question, but more of a demand to finish your delegation.
I should tell you. Well, to do that, I need to find my ledger and let's. Yeah, I can delegate afterwards. I'll delegate some to you. Huh?
No pressure. I'm kidding.
Amazing. I'm just kidding though. This is very cool. Thanks for presenting, Ivan.
We've got a question from Derek asking how are existing vault managers informed of this new feature?
Yeah, so I mean, we have our channels, Telegram, our Discord, our Twitter account. So basically, through those channels, people we know, people we have a kind of closer relation, where we have emails, we also send out emails. But typically, so we don't know the vault managers, and typically they inform themselves through social media. And also, I mean, they will see this if they will see this the graph integration on the protocols page.
I have a question. There's a question from Big Jim, which gets priority. So is this live now? Any figures on uptake over the other yield providers?
It is live now. It has been live for a week now. We haven't actually. So what one place where we need to be better is actually analyze these kind of things. We haven't currently done that, but we should. So I can't answer you actually. Yeah, but it has been live for a week now. I mean, also for you guys, if you want to build a vault and manage money on behalf of other people, of course you know where to find us, and I guess many of you would have the alpha to know which indexes to delegate to.
Will you guys have that information soon as to how much uptake this new feature has got?
I will ask internally. I need to ask internally. We have some dashboards. I'm not sure we're monitoring that yet, but we certainly need to monitor it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I saw the comment from Matthew saying that seems like a need for a subgraph or something to monitor this, which
well. So we have a very big subgraph, as some of you may know, an ever-changing subgraph, and which causes some problems. So the data is there. The data is in our subgraphs. It's just a question of kind of extracting the data in a usable way. Yeah.
Gotcha. And a question for me, the indexers who are on this call right now, what can they do to get the attention of these fund managers to attract delegation to their indexes? Like how would you recommend them going about, if they think this is an interesting way to get more delegation, how would you recommend them going about trying to attract more?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, in print, so the way we've built it, we kind of, we give each vault managers the ability to explore indexers. But as you saw, it basically sends them to the graph indexes page. Other than that, we don't have a clear way how you as an indexer can kind of reach vault managers. But that's also, it's an interesting question. Yeah, so no clear way. I mean, in principle, you as an indexer, you can go and many of the vaults that are on the platform do have, or some of the vaults, not all of them, but have, let's say, they have contact information. So you can go and kind of tell them that you are a good indexer and they should delegate to you.
Well, there you have it, indexers. That could be a very interesting way to perhaps attract delegation. Cool. Any other additional questions on this topic here?
Yeah, if you do have questions after the call, reach out. I am there in the Graph Discord every once in a while.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And yeah, I look forward to seeing how this is leveraged going forward. And yeah, as you've mentioned, you're quite available on the Discord. So if anyone has any questions, please do reach out to Ivan. Wonderful. And
Thanks
then
for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. Okay, cool. Well, in that case,
I can say something about 𝗨𝗂𝗟𝗶. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
It's not a ton of detail, but there's an email that's going out any moment now. Provide some information on the news that just released at the start of today's call about Phantom. So we'll be sending out that email. There's some other details in there. And so keep your eye on your inbox for that any second.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nick. I really do appreciate that. Thank you all for being here today. And thank you all for being so flexible, understanding about the location change. And I'm glad we were finally able to pull it off. And yeah, I look forward to having you guys all again at the next Index Office Hours, where hopefully we can make sure it's a lot smoother than this one. Thank you all, and we'll see you again next week.